In this tutorial, we are going to create the title for our panel and give it a distressed look so that it will look old and beat up. So when you finish this lesson, you will be able to use the Type tool as well as create a custom brush in Photoshop, one that you will be able to use on a layer mask to distress the type. So let's open up our background PSD that we made in the last lesson and choose the Type tool on the left-hand side about 3/4 of the way down. And when you click the Type tool, if you will click again and hold down your click, you will see a list of options fly out. And you just want the default option, the horizontal Type tool. We're going to use a very standard typeface. We'll use Arial Black, make it 60 points, make sure it's centered, and then click the color square so that you can choose the type color. Once it pops up in the RGB section on the right, type in a value of 231, 231, 231. And that's going to give us a light gray that just escapes being completely white. Now hit the caps lock key on your keyboard. Now with your cursor around the halfway point at the top, click and type his name, Christy Mathewson, keeping in mind that in this case, Mathewson only has one T in it. Now turn caps lock off. Go to the tools on the left-hand side of your screen and choose the very first one, the Move tool. Or if you like, you can do that by hitting V on your keyboard. With your Move tool selected, hit Command or Control A on your keyboard and you will see marching ants around the edges of the background. That means everything in your document is selected. Now, with the layer where his name is typed selected, look at the tools that are across the top and you will see some Align tools. Click the fifth one and that will align the title in the center horizontally. Now on your keyboard, hit Command-D on your Mac or Control-D on your PC to deselect everything. With the Christy Mathewson type layer still selected and the Move tool still active, use the down arrow on your keyboard to move the title down about, 10 or 15 pixels from the top, just somewhere where it looks good to you. We don't want it butted right up against the top. We are now going to add a layer mask to the title by clicking the rectangle with a circle in it at the bottom of the Layers panel. Now we're going to create a brush to make the title look grungy. Click Command-S on your Mac or Control-S on your PC to save your work. At this point, we're going to open up a completely new file. Well, actually, it's one you've saw before. The top menu, click File, Open. Navigate to your Assets folder where you have everything else you've been working with and select the Grunge 02 file. You can get your crop tool by hitting C on your keyboard or by selecting it from the tools on your left. It should be about the fifth one down. Now crop the Grunge 2 background so that you don't have a lot of the light yellow selected. You will want the crop to be, about 2,500 pixels wide and about 500 pixels tall, but it doesn't have to be exact, just something that looks basically like a long rectangle. Now click in the crop and move it around until you're satisfied with its position, remembering that you want as little of the yellow part as possible selected. And when you're satisfied with it, hit Enter or Return on your keyboard. Now under File, select Save As, and when the window pops up, rename it Grunge Brush, and under the Format dropdown, choose Photoshop and click the Save button. You can also do that by hitting Shift-Command-S on your Mac or Shift-Control-S on your PC. Now, let's go to work making this brush. We're going to start by making it grayscale, or using Photoshop's language, desaturating it by going to the top menu and choosing Image, Adjustments, and Desaturate. Again, as I said in the last lesson, this can also be done by using Shift-Command-U or Shift-Control-U. Now on the Layers panel, let's give it a new adjustment layer. You should know how to do this by now. It's the circle that's been divided in two. Click on that, and when the menu pops up, choose Threshold. What that will do is give the layer as high of a contrast as possible with just two colors, black or white. And when the Properties menu flies out, set it to about 150. Now when you're creating a brush, the black part is what makes up the brush, and there's way too much of that. So we're going to add another adjustment layer, and this time it will be an invert layer. All that does is just flips the color. And that is much closer to what we're wanting. However, I still think there's a little bit too much black in there for what we want to do, so we're going to lessen that a bit. First, select all three layers, right-click, and then select Merge Layers from the menu. Now, choose the brush from the panel on your left or by hitting the B key on your keyboard, and just below the very top menu you have your brush options. Choose the second from the left, your brush presets. In the top right corner of the brush presets, you will see what looks like a sprocket wheel, and when you click that, another menu flies out with all the presets that are available to you. And about a third from the bottom, choose square brushes, and if it asks you if you're sure that that's what you want to do, just click OK. Choose the 24-pixel square brush. Now, from the very top menu, choose Window, then Brush. You should see a panel with all sorts of options. Now, go to the menu on that panel that is labeled Shape Dynamics. For size jitter, set it to 100%. And what that means is that when you paint with the brush, the size of the brush will constantly be changing from very small to the full size of the brush, which in this case is 24 pixels. Now set the angle jitter to 100%, which means that the angle of the brush will constantly be changing as well while painting. And at the bottom of the panel, you will see a preview of how the brush is going to look when you paint with it. Now go back to the menu part of the Brush Presets panel and select Brush Tip Shape. Set the brush size to 150 pixels and the spacing to 50%, and we are almost ready to start painting, but first we want to reset the foreground and background colors, so hit D on your keyboard. That will make sure that the default colors are black and white. We want to be painting with white, so if that's not the foreground color, and you can see which one is the foreground and which one is the background over here on the left at the bottom of the Tools panel, just hit X on your keyboard, and that's going to flip from black to white in the foreground. Now look at where the black is the thickest. We want most of that black gone. We want this to be mainly white with just a few blotches of black. So with your white brush, start painting in short, random strokes over the black. And you see what it's doing because we have set the brush the way we did. It doesn't look like it is painting in any sort of actual pattern. It's just doing so randomly. Okay, now when you're satisfied with it, select everything by clicking Command-A on the Mac or Control-A on the PC. Go to the top menu and select Edit, and a little over halfway down, Define Brush Preset. Panel's going to pop up, and you can name the brush whatever you want. I'm just going to call mine Grungy Brush. And you have made a paintbrush in Photoshop. Now, let's go back to the document that we were working in and make sure that the layer has your title selected, and make sure that the layer mask itself that we created earlier is selected as well. When you create a new brush in Photoshop, then that is the brush that is selected by default. Now, this brush is going to be huge, which is why you just see a cross where the cursor is. It's about 2,500 pixels wide, which means that it's about 3 times the size of this document. However, if you will hit your left bracket key on your keyboard several times, you can shrink it down. Left bracket always shrinks the brush, right bracket makes it bigger. In this case, you want the brush to be about the width of the document itself, and as it gets smaller, you can actually start to see the shape of the brush. By the way, just as an aside, it's a good idea to make sure that the caps lock key is off, because if it's on, no matter how small the brush is, all you will see is that cross. Let me show you. You can see the brush shape on the screen, but then I hit caps lock, and you see what happens. You just get that cross, caps lock off, the brush is back. Now, make sure that black is your foreground color, and here we're just going to click with the brush. We're going to do it several times, each time moving it so that you get some randomness. You don't actually want to paint with the brush using strokes, you just want to click with it. And you can see that wherever the brush lands and black is put on the layer mask, that part of the name disappears. That's another part of the power of layer masks. Now, be careful because you don't want to mask the name so much that it's unreadable. You just want it to look kind of old and chipped. Now, suppose you left too much black in the brush you created and it looks like you might have removed too much of the name. In that case, you just switch colors from black to white by hitting X on the keyboard and then start painting it back again with white as your foreground color. Remember, this is non-destructive editing. That means that with the mask, it's not actually removing chunks of the name layer, it's just covering those chunks up. Black covers, white reveals, and with gray, what you see just depends on how dark or how light the gray is. Also, remember that you can change the size of your brush and therefore the look of your mask by using the bracket keys on your keyboard to make the brush bigger or smaller. And once you are satisfied with the way it looks, hit V on your keyboard to choose the Move tool. Now, let's add some effects to give this a little bit of depth. On the Layers panel, click FX at the bottom and choose Drop Shadow. On the Drop Shadow menu, set it for 100% opacity. Make sure the angle is 135%, set the distance to 1 pixel, and the size to 2 pixels. Now, choose Bevel and Emboss from the menu on the left side of the panel. And under that menu, set the Style to Outer Bevel, Technique to Chisel Hard, Depth to 150%, and the size to 1 pixel. Now click OK. And I think that's kind of what we're looking for, something that looks old, abused, and distressed. Now let's go up to the menu and under File, choose Save As and give it a new name. Let's call it Matthewson_panel, and under Format, we'll choose PSD. In our next tutorial, we will look at how to take an old photo and make it look even older and more beat up. We'll see you then.